It is Locked On Jazz for the 1st of September. Andy Larsen stops by for parts 5 and 6 of his incredible interview, looking at all of the NBA. Points gained continues. The Warriors, the Clippers, and the Lakers. We're talking about it all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Pow!
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. We are free and on all platforms, now available also on YouTube under Locked On Jazz and all your podcast platforms. Subscribe for free, follow for fun, and enjoy the podcast. Thanks very much for tuning in. We will continue our points game breakdown here in just a second. Andy Larsen joins me for parts 5 and 6 of our extended interview in the summer interview series. It is the 1st of September. We are like less than a month away from training camp opening up in the NBA. I actually stopped by the Basketball Hall of Fame the other day to get my juices flowing a little bit. So kind of fun. All right. Let's continue with points gained. If you're new to this, we did the last one on the last show. Points gained is the exclusive offensive metric to the Locked On Jazz podcast. And what we do is we look at the players they're going to play. We allocate 100 scoring opportunities a game, which is about right. Actually, it's 95 is about the right number per team. And we allocate how many points above average that team would score with their offense. And points gained takes an individual use of a possession and compares it to league average. And then I allocate what I think the possessions will be and then come up with a number. So we looked at Dallas and Denver the other day, and Dallas was 4.5 and Denver was 4.9. Both of those are really high, are really, really good. Let's take a look at the Warriors. And as I'll talk to Andy Larsen about, I don't get the Warrior love. If you look at the betonline.ag over-unders for the NBA, they have the Warriors up in the elite category. Just fundamentally, you're relying on probably 3 young guys in Wiseman in his second year, the 2 rookies, Moody and Jonathan Kuminga this year. Your Klay Thompson hasn't played in 2 years. Draymond Green is noticeably slowing, and Steph Curry is superhuman. Andrew Wiggins is Andrew Wiggins. Otto Porter's an okay pickup, but frankly hasn't been that good for a little while. Maybe he gets better there. I'm lost, honestly. And the numbers kind of back this up. Now, Steph's the best player in the NBA offensively and is superhuman. And I have him using 25 scoring opportunities a game. He used 24 last year and then, allocated out. I don't really know what to do with Klay Thompson in the sense that Klay Thompson is going to be playing, not playing until Christmas. And so what do you do with Klay Thompson when you allocate his scoring opportunities and where he comes out in this mix and what you expect out of him? So, when I look at Klay Thompson back 2 years ago, his points gained was 0.4, which was not at the top of his level. He actually was not having nearly as good a year as he usually does. So that's a little bit of a kind of a complicated thing to try to now figure out what we think Klay Thompson is going to be as a player. He was only 0.4 in the 17-18 season. He was 1.4 in the 16-17 season. But now you're back super far from who he is as a player. He was 1.5. So, he had actually had a considerable slip in his game in the 18-19 season before getting injured. In his efficiency, I'm not sure why. It may have been a slight beginning of aging in some ways. But when you look at him again, it makes it awfully difficult for me to kind of analyze where I think he's going to be as an offensive player. So I've put him in at about 12 or 14 possessions a game. This is kind of when he's at his peak, and then taken some out of Damian Lee and figured that he gets to play a little less. And the Warriors come out as a 2.5 points gained team in that circumstance. So compare that. Dallas is at 4.5. Denver's at 4.9. Golden State's at 2.5. The easiest thing I would say about that, if you think about 1 point, it's probably about 3 wins. So I see the Warriors as almost 6 to 7 wins on the offensive side of the ball behind Dallas and Denver. When we look at this, I'm not. Rookies are traditionally about a 0.08. So that's Kuminga and Moody, Otto Porter, Jordan Poole, Draymond Green, Nima Bjelica, Damian Lee, Kent Bazemore. I'm not left them and went to the Lakers. I'm not. He wasn't great. I don't see it. I'm sorry. I'm missing. I think everyone's excited, but this is a team that didn't make the playoffs last year. Lost in the play-in game. Steph was unbelievable last year. Draymond is noticeably slipping. They're crazy young. Andrew Wiggins has never been efficient. I'm just not buying on the Warriors this season. Let's go to the Clippers. Everyone's dismissing the Clippers because of the fact that that they're not really a title contender, because of the fact that they don't have Kawhi Leonard. That might be true, but to not call them a contender, I think, is a mistake. I've allocated the possessions out of this one with no Kawhi Leonard for the entire season. Paul George steps up to about 22 scoring opportunities a game. And then they just have this amazing balance from probably 12 a game to Marcus Morris, to 11 to Eric Bledsoe, 11 to Reggie Jackson, 9 to Serge Ibaka if he comes back, 8 to Luke Kennard, 7 Batum, 7 to Zubac, 8 to Terrence Mann, 5 to the rookie Keon Johnson. And the key here, as is the key with our points gained analysis on almost every team, is almost none of these players are negative. This is the key to building a team. The only players on this team that are negative are Justice Winslow, who's one of the worst offensive players in the league. Eric, and I have assumed that he will actually not play for them. And Eric Bledsoe. And then the rookie Keon Johnson, that he will likely be about a negative 0.8 player. That's kind of where rookies are when they play. And the fact of the matter is Keon Johnson probably doesn't play for them, and I probably should reduce down the amount of possessions that he's going to get in the season, because when you're as good as they are, they'll try to give him some time, but there's no reason for him to actually get time. And as you just break this team out, it's just so I have the Clippers coming in as a positive 4.8. So they're right there. You have Denver at 4.9, Clippers at 4.8, Dallas at 4.5, and Golden State at 2.5. It's a considerable difference to see where the Golden State Warriors are compared to everyone else. But here's the stunner of all stunners. The Lakers are awful. I don't know. I've never had this happen where a team is this far off the projections, and I don't think I've ever missed by as much as I'm going to have to miss for the Lakers to be true. The Lakers numbers are just horrendous. We'll dig more into this coming up, probably on the show later this week. Tomorrow. Actually, I like to get a Thursday show out, so I'll try to get a Thursday show out and really dig into this with you. But here's just a little kind of note and teaser on it. This is crazy. So first thing that has to be admitted to about the Lakers is that LeBron is aging. If we go to 16-17 and start to look back at LeBron, he was a plus 2.8 in 16-17. In the 17-18 season, LeBron was a 2.8. In the 18-19 season, LeBron James began to slip a little, reasonably slow. He went to a 1.3. In the 19-20 season, now he's on a championship level LA team in the bubble, in the uniqueness of the bubble, LeBron came out, went from the 2.8 to 1.3, and then LeBron went to a 0.6 in the 19-20 season. And in the 2021 year, last year, when LeBron was basically having an MVP season, we talked about, he was a 1.3 points gained. He is not the same player that he once was. I don't know how far you want me to take this back, but if we go back to the 14-15 season and LeBron, we're talking about peak LeBron James, you're talking about a guy that was at about 2 on his points game. 15-16 season, he's the third best in the league at 2.8. 16-17 season, he's the fifth best in the league at 2.8. 17-18 season, he's the fifth best at 2.8. 18-19 season, he suddenly is about the 30th best, maybe 24th best in the league at a 1.3. 19-20 season, he is at a 0.6, and last year he's at a 1.3. He is not the incredible offensive force of efficiency that he once was in his career. So when you suddenly surround LeBron James with negative offensive players like Carmelo Anthony and Russell Westbrook and Dwight Howard and Taylor Horton-Tucker and Kent Bazemore and Trevor Ariza, it's going to end badly. And then the most interesting one to me on points gained, and we'll dig more into this specifically with the Lakers on tomorrow's show and explain more tomorrow. This is a little bit of your tease of why the Lakers, but Anthony Davis last year was a negative 0.6 point gains player. That's crazy. What happened that he had such a poor year last year? The year before, Anthony Davis was a 1.9. The year before that, in his last year in New Orleans, Anthony Davis was a 1.6. I think it's fair to estimate that he's going to return and not be a negative player. When you look back at 17-18 season, he's a 2.5. And the 16-17 season for Anthony Davis, where he's a 1.3, he's actually never been a crazy efficient player, but 16-17, 1.3. 17-18, he peaks to 2.5. 18-19, he goes to 1.6. He goes to LA, he goes to 1.9. Last year, he goes to negative 0.6. I do think it's a reasonable expectation. Our numbers are going to have Anthony Davis as about an average offensive player because of last year, and he's probably better than that. But even that, as you will see on tomorrow's show, does not fix the Los Angeles Lakers. They are truly going to come out as one of the worst offensive teams in the Western Conference this year. And I don't think you can be that good and be the leaders in the Western Conference. We'll dig into that more. We'll talk about it more tomorrow. Andy Larsen comes up next. Today's show brought to you by my good friends over at Intercap Lending. Steve Carter is simply the best. If you look at the reviews we get all the time, Joel Heiler reviewed, I can't think of any other business I've dealt with that's been so responsive. Steve immediately got me some numbers to start looking at. When we decided to move forward, it was more painless than I ever expected a mortgage to be. We ended up saving a significant amount on monthly payments. The whole process only took 3 weeks because I live outside of Utah. They sent a notary to my home to finalize the paperwork, so I didn't need to travel anywhere. I would highly recommend Steve and other folks at Intercap. Here's from Mr. Valdez. We worked with Steve 3 times now. I have to say he's the best. He and his team work tirelessly to find the best rate, reduce stress, and make the process as simple as possible. It's all Steve Carter over at Intercap Lending. Intercap Lending, make sure you call Steve at our direct line and tell him you're with Locked On and get the corporate discount, 385-800-8528. Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190465. For more information, visit intercaplending.com. That's 385-800-8528, 385-800-8528, or you can email me at dlock09@gmail.com, and I will make the introduction. Today's show is also brought to you by Sweatblock. This is a really incredible company that does great things for you. Doctor created, doctor recommended, featured on the Rachel Ray Show, but not for chefs, for firefighters. Been a bestseller on Amazon for the last 10 years with over 13,000 reviews, and now it's out, and we've got a discount code for you so that you can get Sweatblock at sweatblock.com for 20% off. What is Sweatblock? Sweatblock, if you have excessive sweating, a big presentation, heck, I was just in Boston. If you live in the humidity of Boston or Dallas or someplace like that, holy smokes. Sweatblock is stronger and more efficient than most clinical antiperspirants. You simply use it the night before you go to bed, you shower, wash up, go to bed, use it. The next morning you wake up, go about your day, and you're guaranteed no sweating. It works up to 7 days. It sounds too good to be true. But it is true. No more pitting out, no more pitting shirts out, no more walking around like this with your arms up against your chest so that you can't. You don't want to show your underarms. Get it today, 20% off at sweatblock.com with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's 20% off with the promo code LOCKEDON. Andy Larsen, David Locke, Locked On Jazz. Back with you. Summer or off-season time, even though it's kind of weird. Training camp is right around the corner. This is like the shortest off-season ever. We'll see it. We'll get some thoughts on that coming up tomorrow or our next show with Andy. All right, Hassan Whiteside's interesting to me. So I've never been a Hassan Whiteside fan, and I don't know. And I think I actually had a disdain for Hassan Whiteside that actually then when I looked back at his career, I was like, oh, I might have been a little off on that. One of the things I didn't like early in his career is he had 4 blocks a game, but had the highest defensive rating allowed, right? And he actually is like Doak in Summer League, where Doak was going to block every shot imaginable, and you get one of them, but 5 times you get someone gets a layup behind you. And so I think Hassan Whiteside frustrated me a little bit as a player because people talk about how great he is defensively, and as someone who thought I understood the game, I would be like, that's not great defensively. That just blocks shots. So I think that's there. What's interesting to me when I look back at his career, he's got this reputation that started because he went to I think multiple high schools, multiple colleges, then lasted a game in Sacramento, and then went through disappeared for 2 years, and then Miami finds him, and he got labeled at that moment in time. And then I look at his career since then, he spent 5 years in Miami. Pat Riley does not humor fools at a great rate. And the biggest thing he did wrong in Miami is he slowed down the development of Bam Adebayo. Okay. The fans who wanted Hassan Whiteside on the bench for Bam Adebayo might have been right. Then he goes to Portland. He's really good. I've talked to people in Portland who said his teammates loved him. He was a good teammate to them. So, that I thought was interesting. And he goes to Sacramento, and it's a mess. Now, Sacramento's a mess, but there also is this terrible thing in the NBA where aging is not progressive. Age is a nasty, filthy cliff that you just fall off and you're done. You just disappear. Wesley Matthews probably isn't in the league this year. He just is gone. It's bye. See ya. It's over. So what's your take on there's the Hassan Whiteside knucklehead. There's wait a sec, he spent 5 years in Miami, he can't be a knucklehead. Wait a sec, his numbers are amazing. Whoa, he was great in Portland. Whoa, he didn't play in Sacramento, maybe fell it. Where are you in this various choices of which door Hassan Whiteside door you're walking through?
Yeah, I guess I'm in the middle of all of them, and it's was he a $100 million player for Miami? I don't think he deserved $100 million when you look at kind of any sort of advanced analytics on it. And yet, is he a pretty good signing for the minimum? Yeah, I think so. And I don't really. I think kind of at 31, he is. I'm not that worried about kind of the character issues impacting the team. I think, quite frankly, this team is got Quinn Snyder to kind of get them through that and is good at handling that kind of stuff. I think you're right that the age is a real concern and there is a chance that he is cooked, and that happens with NBA guys real quick. You're totally right. But that's the thing is we don't know if it's that he's cooked or that it was Sacramento. And I think it's a worthwhile gamble to find out. And I do believe in the replacement level backup center market being reasonable enough that you can do okay if it is a failure. But again, it's a high risk, high reward kind of move that I do think that if he plays like he did in Portland, just 2 seasons ago, that it is going to be good enough for what the Jazz need. The problem with Portland was they were depending on him to be their starting center for most of the year, right? He was that guy because Nurkic was hurt. And so if he's only playing 10 minutes a night behind Rudy Gobert, the expectations go way down. And if you're on a minimum contract, the expectations go way down. And now it's okay, can you basically play that middle of the quarter role that Derek Favors did last year and have any kind of somewhat similar sort of success? And I think the answer is maybe. I think maybe even probably. It's not for sure going to happen, but I think it's a good bet.
Last year, the Jazz had the number 1 defense in the NBA. They were 0.6 points better than anyone else in the league. So they actually were number 1 by a pretty large margin. And while Rudy Gobert was off the floor, they were in the 23rd percentile, according to Cleaning the Glass defensively, at a 116 defensive rating, when for the season they were a 107.5. Chew on that for a second.
Rudy Gobert is just so good.
He's so great.
He really is just one of the best defensive players ever. It's crazy.
Ever.
We're lucky to get to watch him. I really enjoy that. Anyway, go ahead.
So with Hassan Whiteside as your backup center with a standing reach of 7'7" and actually a legit 7 feet instead of a 6'10" Derek Favors, who just looked super small last year. Can they be like 50th? Like, what do you think in those minutes will be their defensive rating next year?
I think they'll be better. I'm trying to think. I mean, really, you're talking about whether or not. I think the rotation changes a little bit too, so you may see more Rudy Gay in those minutes, and I think he's maybe a better defender than the alternative. I think ultimately, I think they could get up to 15th with Hassan Whiteside, and I'm not a big believer in Hassan Whiteside as a defender, and I do think like the difference between Rudy and Hassan is going to drive Jazz fans a little bit crazy, right? Like they are different kinds of defenders in terms of how they do their business. And Rudy is nearly spotless, and Hassan Whiteside makes all sorts of bad mistakes. And, the pick and roll defense is going to be a little bit questionable. Can they get up to 15th though? I think it's possible because I don't think Fave was brilliant defensively last year.
All right. Rudy Gay or George Niang, who's a better player?
Rudy Gay by a lot. George has gotten himself to be a solid NBA player, which is a huge accomplishment for someone with a kind of his background and his, quite frankly, athletic talent. And yet, I love George's ability to shoot from three, and yet, Rudy Gay is just so much more versatile, and especially defensively.
How do you think Rudy Gay is used, and what do you think he does to this team or for this team?
Yeah, I think he's mostly a 4, maybe almost exclusively a 4. I think he did play those small ball 5 minutes for the Spurs last year, but that was kind of when they were in injury funks, and maybe if Rudy gets hurt or Hassan gets hurt, maybe he plays that role. But I think it is kind of as a George Niang replacement. I think he plays a little bit more than George because he's, again, more versatile. And, I think you can kind of justify him playing more of those minutes. I think it's going to be really interesting to see the minutes when him and Jordan Clarkson are both on the floor, because they are kind of both offensive freestylers who are not super efficient, and kind of, are they just my turn, your turn offense during those minutes? I think it's going to be a real question, and we'll see how that goes. Defensively, though, he's not a perimeter stopper. He's not. If he's guarding a quick guy on the wing, or if they're a guard after a switch, he can get beaten. I think he's really smart about how he defends in the paint, and whether it's just kind of getting kind of picking off those pocket passes, or not necessarily like a rim protector, but a rim botherer a little bit when he's kind of helping down low as kind of that weak side defender. I think his length and his ability to rebound is something that the Jazz didn't have at that position last year. So, I think he plays a 15-minute a night role. I don't expect him to get to like 20 or 25, but I think and again, the offense will be interesting, but I do think that he was good enough defensively for the Spurs to at least kind of give teams a little bit of a different look, or at least at times teams really attack George Niang, right? One-on-one. They're looking to attack him and get him in space and try to beat him speed for speed. I don't really think that they're going to be doing that much with Rudy Gay.
I thought there were some interesting things looking at Rudy Gay's numbers. He's almost a chameleon. I mean, like he had an assist rate of 15% one year in San Antonio and 10% another year. Clearly adapting to what the team needs. And then I thought his presser was really interesting. Like you don't think of, this is a bad stereotype, but you very rarely think of the elite athlete, the 6'7", 220-pound, like elite athlete player as a basketball student because they're so athletic. And that's what Rudy Gay was. When he came in the league, he was the 6'8". Like if at that time when Rudy Gay came out of Connecticut, if you were to build the perfect NBA body, it was Rudy Gay. Now it's become the 6'11" Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis. Like God got creative and like made even more, like as Lee Jenkins said in that great, I think it was the Anthony Davis article when Lee Jenkins, God, I miss his writing. When Lee Jenkins wrote, Anthony Davis was created when God got bored after creating Kevin Durant. Like I can take this one step further, right? Yeah. And like Rudy Gay was like the perfect model. You don't usually think of those guys that are athletically on the elite level being basketball savants because of the fact that they didn't need to. But it does seem from his statistical line of like his usage went way up last year. Actually, with Derek White hurt a bunch of the year and things, that's actually what San Antonio needed. 2 years before, they actually didn't need that. And his assist, he was playing more with DeRozan and his assist rate was way up. Like it's interesting to see how he's changed. And I thought his presser led me to think he's really kind of loves the game in that fashion.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I don't know if I went back to his San Antonio presser when he was first signed, and he said, look, I have two goals here. I want to win a championship. That was when the Spurs had Kawhi Leonard. That didn't work out. I get it. And I want to show off that I have more game than people think. And, I understand what people thought was kind of the Toronto Raptors, Memphis Grizzlies, Rudy Gay, of him just kind of being a 20-point-a-game, empty calories scorer. And he showed more than that in San Antonio, right? Like he did show this ability to pass. He did show this ability to defend. He showed an ability to become a role player. And like, yeah, it was kind of still in the Rudy Gay way. Again, offensively, I'm not saying that I'm not saying he's a ball stopper, but he is kind of a guy that is going to look for isolation plays, post up, turnarounds, that kind of stuff, right? It is a lot of mid-range. But he did show really good rebounding, showed defense, did a lot of kind of role player stuff for that San Antonio team. And like you said, did change from year to year in a significant way. So I think some of that is just because, 15-year NBA veteran is kind of makes you a student of the game to survive. And he has done that. And so I agree with you that he's kind of more than maybe what you thought Rudy Gay was 7, 8, 9 years ago.
By the way, I call this I actually had this conversation with Vince Carter at one point in time, but this is basically the Vince Carter compared to the Tracy McGrady. So Vince Carter is a true student of the game, loves the game the way Rudy Gay does. Tracy McGrady didn't. So when Tracy McGrady didn't get to the ball 32 times a night, he didn't want to play anymore, right? And like Vince Carter, I had this incredible conversation with Vince about he's like, hey, I love the game. Like, how have you adapted from being the man to this bench guy? And Vince was like, I love the game. And I've just tried to learn different ways and different things about the game. And if my choice is being in the game or out of the game, I'm going to be in the game. I love the game. Where I think McGrady, loved to score, loved to be the man. No, he decided, he bypassed $15 million for that, right? No criticism. It just is who you are. I think Rudy Gay fits into the Vince Carter role of I just love the game and want to be around the game.
And it's hard, right? You can say, hey, it's just kind of about that effort, but it's hard to be able to do that kind of stuff. I mean, you have to fight guys night in and night out for rebounds, Rudy Gay played the center last year, and that's a physically demanding position, and he did it, So I think you have to give him a lot of credit for that. And you're right that there are guys who get it and guys who don't. And I like, again, gambling on that kind of guy who knows, who can be put in a bunch of different situations and is, I think, more versatile than some of the Jazz's other role players have been, in recent years.
All right, we've gotten long here, but let's do Jared Butler quickly. So okay. I like him. I mean, I don't want to make this sound like I don't like him, but I watched him and I only watched 2 games. So let's make sure we're clear here. I saw a 6'3" point guard who played a beautiful college game, was in control of where he was, made nice next level passes, right? Didn't make the pass to the next guy, but made the pass to the next guy beyond that. I thought that's what jumped out to me. I saw deep range shooting, which was great. I also saw 6'3" with a 6'4" wingspan, which to me is the first sign of a college player who suddenly gets into the NBA and gets suffocated and the world gets really small really fast. And I thought I saw a lot of plays where, frankly, I thought he did drive in the lane and the world got really small really fast in a collegiate game, which made me pretty nervous. I saw not great rim finishing, but I did with that. I think he was only 50% at the rim for the year. So that makes me a little nervous. But I also saw on a play where he went 1-footed and packed it compared to coming on I think I was on the left side, and on the right side, he came 2 feet, put him down and went into the body. To get to that type of versatility means you got a chance. And I would say my overriding theme is I think the NBA is totally unbelievable. And like, these guys are so great and the league's never been better. And there's been no expansion for 20 years while there's been an international explosion. And the 3 coolest dudes that have played any professional sport other than soccer in the last 20 years are Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James. So if you're over 6'4" and you're an athlete, you're playing in the NBA. So these guys that are entering the league that aren't superstars, I just think it's unbelievably hard on these guys right now. I think the fact that as many guys last year, like Desmond Bane and others, actually had an impact was amazing. So my take on Jared Butler is it's nice. I like him as 40. I didn't watch him and see a 15th pick. I'm going to not lie to you. I don't buy this lottery pick dropped to 40. Maybe unique medical issues dropped to 40 out of the first round. But I didn't see 14 when I watched him. He didn't. Keon Johnson I watched, I thought he looked like 14 to me. Okay, I don't like a lot of his games. He's too mid-range, but he just burst off the screen. He was frankly, the young kid who got drafted by the Spurs early, Primo, off the screen. So, all right, that's my take on Jared Butler. I also think being a rookie point guard in the NBA is brutal. So a lot of my Jared Butler has to do with how much respect I have for the league and the lack of respect I have for college basketball, frankly.
No, I think that's totally fair. Did he remind you of Trey Burke as much as he did when I was watching? And I know that name is awful for Jazz fans, and yet I kind of take it in a sort of I think Trey's kind of his floor, and I mean the good Trey version of basically Trey Burke's problems from an NBA point of view, at least kind of in retrospect, was kind of an approach to the game asset, which I think we know that Jared Butler is going to be better at. And defense, right? And I think Jared Butler was a better college defensive point guard than Trey Burke was. And then I go to that Jared Butler was a better shooter than Trey Burke is in college. And so I kind of see Jared Butler's worst case as being Trey Burke for the Dallas Mavericks. It's hey, you can come off the bench, hit some shots, and he's never going in the paint, because I agree, it's very possible that the length and athleticism is just too much for him down there and he can't get anything done, but he can make some shots and do some intelligent playmaking stuff and kind of get on the court that way. I think kind of given that he is a number 40 pick and, a non-elite athlete, the most likely thing is that he's a backup point guard in the NBA. And that's a really good thing at pick number 40, or heck, even pick number 30. I think that, we both know how unlikely end of first round guys, beginning of second round guys have any form of success in this league. So if Jared Butler can, I just think that he has a really high floor for someone who's drafted in that slot. And then, has a path to becoming a Malcolm Brogdon, Kyle Lowry light kind of player. I'm not saying that it's likely or it's not going to happen in the first couple of years. But the league has become so perimeter oriented that you can be a really, really good point guard in this league without getting into the rim. You just can. And so that he shot, 50% on his catch and shoot threes, and that he shot 45% from 24 feet or more. That he was as good as he was, on contested 3-point shots. That's the killer weapon in today's league, right? And that's one that not a lot of players have. I mean, he really does project out as one of the best shooters in this draft class. And so I think he'll always have that to fall back on. And, kind of whether or not the in the lane passing kind of stuff works out with longer athletes, I think is a real question. I think whether or not he's capable defensively or good defensively is a real question. But or he could be bad. He could be straight up bad defensively. I think that's possible too. Again, different level of athletes. You pointed out, but I think the risk profile is one that I'm really excited about for a number 40, or would have been even excited as a number 30 pick.
Don't forget, I liked Robert Woodard last year. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't forget. No, I think you make a really good argument. All right, that's super long show today with Andy. Thanks for the we got a little carried away. I knew we would in a rabbit hole. I just didn't know it happened. All right, tomorrow or the next show with Andy. Who improves the most in the West? How did the Jazz improve? And there's something new going on in the NBA. I got to get Andy's take on it. Well, that's all coming up on the next show with Andy. Right now, by the way, Andy, you would love Locked On Today. Locked On Today is kind of made for you. Actually, you should start adding Locked On Today to your repertoire of podcasts. So anyway, tell your smart device to play the most recent episode of podcast Locked On Today. The last and final segment with Andy Larsen is right around the corner. I do want to tell you about Indeed. If you are in the market to be hiring, looking for people, it takes so much time. We're doing a bunch of it at Locked On right now. Well, Indeed is here to help you out. General managers ask questions to find the right players. Like, do they have ice water in their veins? Well, Indeed Assessment's going to ask the equivalent for your company and help you in the process. They make it incredibly simple. They attract, they interview, and they hire. Help you with the whole process. Indeed can do it all, the hiring in one place, even the interviewing. Just don't hope your perfect candidate will find you. Indeed's hiring tools help you cut through the noise to hire faster and smarter. In fact, Indeed's Instant Match provides a list of quality candidates whose resumes are on Indeed the moment you post a job. So get started right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked. Get a $75 credit, Indeed.com/locked, Indeed.com/locked. Offer valid through September 30th. Terms and conditions apply. The number one source of hires in the U.S., according to Talent Nest, Indeed delivers 1.5 times more hires and internal referrals, according to Talent Nest. And with Indeed Instant Match, over 90% of employers get quality candidates. So go right now to Indeed.com/locked and get $75 sponsored job credit, $75 credit at Indeed.com/locked. Today's show also brought to you by RockAuto.com. They've been in the business of helping you and other do-it-yourselfers for 20 years. Why spend 30, 50, even 100% more on the same parts with the chain store or car dealerships? We got a great text the other day from one of, I think it was Joe Marino, Locked On Bills listeners, who's like, I just saved a ton. Thanks you guys so much. Rock Auto's prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you need. So go explore their easy-to-use website today. It's old school, kind of take you back a little bit. Why? Have a search mechanism and make it so you don't have to pay a bunch of money for Flash and those things and save money doing it. Right? Locked On the How'd You Hear About Us section. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. It's RockAuto.com. Enjoy it at RockAuto.com and take advantage of the incredible segment with Andy Larsen. What a fun sequence of 3 shows it's been. Please send him a thank you to Andy B. Larsen on Twitter. Subscribe to the Salt Lake Tribune as a thank you for him doing this. Support our local journalists, both our sports and our important real journalists that are out there. Oh, wait, you're a real journalist too.
No, I guess kind of in COVID era, but like still, it doesn't feel, the basketball stuff still is just being fun, right?
Will NBA arenas stay full capacity all season, Andy?
I think if they start at full capacity, they will. I think it's going to be a location by location thing. Like, I don't think the Warriors are going to start full capacity. I think a lot of kind of the smaller market teams will. Quite honestly, the red state places will. And if they start open, they will be open for the whole season.
Will the Warriors start full but have to be vaccinated?
I could absolutely see that happening. Yeah, that's a good point.
Will individual teams have the vaccination rule, or will the league put down a mandate on these arenas so that teams don't have to do it?
I don't think the league will, because I think that would be a bad. It give them the kind of weird PR that the league really, really, really wants to avoid. But I think the individual teams in kind of the bigger cities do. But I mean, I could absolutely see that happening where the league comes down and says, hey, everyone's got to be vaccinated. I don't think it's likely.
All right. Before we got into that,
yeah,
you said that Donovan was going to be more heliocentric or something. I still don't know what the hell you're talking about, but I'm going with it. I sound good now.
Heliocentric. Can I explain it?
Yeah, sure.
So heliocentrism is this idea that the NBA has gotten much more star-oriented over the last 10 years. And if you look at like the usage rates of guys like Luka Doncic, James Harden, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, so on and so forth, those guys are their team's offense, right? They are options 1, 2, and 3, and everything's about James Harden running off a pick and roll and then, doing his thing. Obviously not with the Nets now, but when he was with the Rockets, right? And because we have such exceptional offensive players in the league, it just makes sense to give all of your possessions to a Luka Doncic if you have a Luka Doncic. Donovan may be approaching the point where it just makes sense to give as many possessions as Donovan can take to Donovan. And so, I agreed. Mike Conley is a great player. Bojan Bogdanovic is a great player. Jordan Clarkson's great, blah, 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 blah. But Donovan is so good that it may just make sense to, if he is truly taking kind of an offensive leap, then it may make sense to give him more possessions. It's like heliocentrism is how the earth rotates around the sun. The Jazz world might revolve around Donovan Mitchell.
Okay, so the only question I have on this is that his usage rate last year was 33.5, right?
Yeah.
Do you know who's never had a usage rate higher than 31.6?
Who's that?
Damian Lillard.
Yeah. But, I talked to Dame about this when he was up here at Weber State for kind of the alumni game up there. But he's always considered himself a system guy. And he is a guy who's like, hey, I want to work within a team construct. And then, when it gets to the last 5 minutes, I'm going to take a lot of shots. But, even in games, game 5 or game 6 last year when they lost, in the fourth quarter, he took 3 shots. He is built differently than Donovan Mitchell is and I know that he is the guy who's taken and made more incredible buzzer beaters than, nearly anyone else in NBA playoff history. And yet, in terms of every possession down the floor, dribbling the ball and shooting it, I think Donovan is willing to take on a bigger role at the end of games than even Damian Lillard.
All right. So
we're out of game 2.
We had 30% for what were the numbers I gave you? Last year in pick and rolls, Donovan Mitchell had 28%, Joe Ingles had 22%, Mike Conley had 22%, Jordan Clarkson had 14%. What's your guess on the allocation this season?
So I think essentially Mike Conley and Joe Ingles get squeezed out a little bit, and Joe Ingles especially. So I think Donovan goes from 28 to 32%. I think Jordan Clarkson probably stays at 14% because there's no way to get him to do less. That's what Jordan Clarkson is. I think honestly, you Bogey stays at about 4%. You get Rudy Gay probably takes 5 to 6 to 7% of those. And then, I think you're at Mike Conley with 16 and Joe Ingles, honestly, with 11%, maybe 12%. And part of that's kind of the natural aging of Joe Ingles now that he's at that stage in his career. And some of that is, the Jazz just have so many players who can run pick and roll right now that it becomes difficult to find him those spots. It'll be interesting to see how Joe works with Hassan Whiteside. He obviously had that combination with Derek Favors. He does work really well with Rudy Gobert, but kind of how the minutes play out next year will be interesting. But I think Mike Conley and Joe Ingles get squeezed out a little bit. And maybe that makes sense given where they are in their NBA careers. As guys over 32, 33, 34 who are naturally going to take on fewer possessions.
Okay, I know we have taken a lot of your time this week, but and I have one big picture topic, but you and I cannot exist without asking, Russell Westbrook and the Lakers, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's not what I would have done. And I understand that LeBron and Russ are friends, and, I think it will work out really well in the regular season because you can give LeBron nights off and Russ can just, get 20 points and 20 rebounds and 10 assists or whatever and do the thing, right? But in terms of defending them in the playoffs, it makes it a lot easier to defend them in the playoffs because you can have whoever Russ is guarding help off, shade off into the paint on LeBron and Anthony Davis pick and rolls. And, then dare Russ to shoot. And it's a formula that we've seen work in the playoffs before. It's a formula that I think we'll see work in the playoffs again. And it's possible that that team is just good enough to win on athleticism. And it definitely could happen that way. But for most teams, we haven't seen Russell Westbrook teams do particularly well in the playoffs. And I think he's the reason why.
All right. So here's my theory that there's something different about the NBA. I alluded to this earlier, actually, when we were talking about Jared Butler. So there's been no expansion for 20 years. What was it? Something like 80% of MVP votes were for international players. The game is better than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Donovan Mitchell is unbelievable. He is great. He is fully capable of carrying you to an NBA playoff victory with his offensive skills. What is he, the 18th best player in the NBA?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Devin Booker is great. Unbelievable. Can definitely carry you offensively to an NBA playoff win. What is he? 18th best player in the NBA?
Yeah.
Chris Middleton carried the Milwaukee Bucks to NBA Finals wins. What's he? The 25th best player in the NBA?
Yeah.
We have never had this. It used to be there were 5 guys in the league that could carry you to a playoff win. There's 20, 30 guys in the league. Trae Young, where do you rank him as players in the NBA?
Right.
There are so many guys that can just carry you to a win in a playoff game, which probably means carrying you to a playoff series win, that I actually think we've got 9, 10 teams that all think they have a chance to win the title. Everyone's got somewhere between a 10 and 17% chance. And you're just that's where it's kind of back to where we were. We've alluded to this twice, right? One in the Jared Butler conversation and one in the first. So and this is where we are now, that there's just so much talent, so much offensive talent. And you just you've got there's 10 teams. Has there ever been a season where 10 teams are opening the year thinking they can win it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there has been, and you're right that there's more parity than ever before, and I think you kind of see that in the Vegas odds. You can look at it that way. I also think you can look at it at kind of the bottom end of the chart and say how many teams are really know that they're not going to be good next year. How many teams are not trying to make the playoffs next year, and it's Oklahoma City and Houston, and that might be it. It's you really have kind of everyone trying, and to some extent, the NBA's anti-tanking stuff has worked. And then, I think not having a juggernaut Chicago Bulls, Golden State Warriors team establish itself is making teams feel hey, now is our time. You look at what the Milwaukee Bucks did last year. You look at what the Toronto Raptors did 3 years ago. You can clearly win a title being really pretty good and getting the right breaks at the right time, right? That's how you do it. And so you're totally right. There are 10 teams, maybe more in the league next year that think they can win it. And, it'd be difficult to argue against any of those teams, can the Clippers win it next year? Yeah, I think so. You imagine, Kawhi Leonard gets healthy, you come into the playoffs, and all of a sudden they're a team that they weren't last year, when they had to be in the Western Conference Finals. The Suns clearly can. Bucks, Nets, Sixers, even the Nuggets, the Jazz. I mean, Celtics. I think all of these teams have, and obviously, I think the number one team is the Brooklyn Nets, and I think they probably have the best case just because they have Kevin Durant, who is basketball god. But it's incredible.
I have 11.
We didn't even say the Lakers.
Right?
The Lakers.
I have 11 teams, and I don't have the Celtics. Here's the betonline.ag lines for championship. Tell me if something, this is in order rather than in odds. Tell me something where you quibble, okay? So Brooklyn is 1. Lakers are 2.
Yeah, I quibble.
Huge drop to Milwaukee at 3. Warriors at 4.
I quibble.
I don't get it. Like, they were like a borderline playoff team last year. They're adding Klay Thompson, who's coming off an ACL and an Achilles tendon.
Yeah.
Like, I get Kevin Durant just did this, and maybe we're at a medical science where it can happen, but like, I don't get it. I'm not like, I'm gonna have to say like I was wrong at the end if the Warriors are one of the top 3 teams in the West. I don't see it, and I mean, Kuminga had a great crossover in the summer league. Okay, like I just don't see it.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't think their rookies end up helping because, rookies are not usually helpful players in their rookie seasons. That's just how that goes. And I'm not a believer in James Wiseman. He was very bad defensively last year. And even if he's like moderately decent this year defensively, I still think it's rough. I just don't think, and I think Draymond's taken a huge step back. And I think that's really kind of the underrated part of why they've fallen. Yeah, let's say they get 100% Klay and they're really tough to defend. I don't see it. I think they've lost a lot of kind of the honestly the novelty that made them so good, right? Like some of what they did was they were first to this idea of playing small ball and shooting as well as they did and shooting as frequently as they did. And now, for what they are, they end up taking a lot of mid-range. And, the league is kind of cut up in terms of mentality and how to deal with some of those things. So, yeah, I'm with you. In terms of 4th most likely to win a title, I'm thinking more like 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, like.
We had the 1 seed last year, right?
Yeah.
Did we play the Warriors in the playoffs?
No.
Oh, okay. Just checking. Clippers at 5, Sixers at 6. These are all the same odds. Clippers, 76ers, Suns, Jazz. So those are all the same. So they're really actually tied. Then Nuggets, Mavericks, Heat. Those are the 11 that like really like I think. And then there's a big drop to Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, New York, Portland in the next group.
Yeah, I mean, I would put Atlanta, Boston above Miami. And I understand what Miami did this offseason, and yet like I also just think that there are limits to, again, over 35, getting Kyle Lowry essentially. But and I understand that they made the NBA Finals in the bubble, and that was a weird bubble season. But like I could see Atlanta like essentially Trae Young superstar plus them putting it all together. John Collins gets better. Terrific role-playing cast around them. Someone like a DeAndre Hunter gets better. Or Boston, again, to me, having 2 stars like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum is really important. And I think they're 2-way stars too, which really helps.
I have not looked necessarily at the Jazz schedule in this way. Here's my one other thought on what I think is important to this season. First year NBA coaching in this league is brutally difficult. There are like 9 first year NBA head coaches who almost all of them have no head coaching experience. Like I think some of these guys are they may all turn out to be very good head coaches, but in the opening months of the season, I think they're going to get humiliated. Interesting.
So, and those coaches, for the most part, are at the bottom ends of their conferences, right? I mean, I'm trying to think, is there a first-time coach among those 11 we named?
No.
So
you go, no. And Dallas probably, because of their head coach, shouldn't be listed in that group.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. I think that's a incredibly dumb hire, but we'll move on.
You said that, I didn't.
I can say that. I think that's an incredibly dumb hire on a lot of levels.
Right. No, I'm not sure I would.
You can't say you agree, but I understand. This is my opinion that I have aired on your podcasts. And
right. Well, Boston, Washington, Boston and Washington, the East, are the high-profile teams that have first-year head coaches.
Fair. Yeah, okay. I could see like kind of taking Boston out of and again, they were kind of fringy to begin with. I could see taking Boston out of it from that idea. Obviously Portland with Chauncey.
And it's not that I don't think these guys will be good head coaches, but I've watched the best head coaches in their first time at it. It's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really, really like so much of like what I think people forget about this league is how hard it is. Like that's kind of my take. Like it goes to the Jared Butler take I had earlier in our conversation. It goes to what I think about these coaches. Not that they won't be good one day, but like going up against like Quinn Snyder, Tyronn Lue, Monty Williams. Like Monty Williams was great in Phoenix. He'd done it before.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Terry Stotts was great in Portland. He had done it before and not done it very well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I think I think the standard of coaching is so much higher than it was 5 to 10 years ago too, where I think 5 to 10 years ago, there were 5 obviously bad NBA head coaches that were just kind of stuck in the past, didn't get it, whatever. I'm thinking Byron Scott, was just not there as a Lakers head coach. I think there are 2 guys who I might consider not there in the NBA now.
I was going to say, last year there were 2, 1, maybe 2. Now I think 1.
Yeah, I agree.
On that note,
I bet we're both talking about the same person too.
I'm certain of it. It is Locked On. Thank you so much to Andy. Please send him thank yous. Please send him thank yous. Please send him thank yous.
Thank you for having me.
I would promote his podcast, but he doesn't do it.
We're going to. I mean, this is starting. We're going to do a whole new Tribune reboot. We're not even going to call it the Weekly Run anymore. We've got a new moderator to come in to navigate our conversation. I mean, we'll explain more about this later, but
all right, keep an eye out. Cool stuff happening. Yeah. Keep an eye out for the Trib podcast. I wasn't trying to not promote. I just didn't think it existed.
Yeah, you didn't know.
Our last conversation post both being vaccinated when we actually saw each other was about how there weren't podcasts. So my bad. Anyway. Yeah. All right. That is Andy Larsen. Thanks so much for the time, Andy. We greatly appreciate it this week. It's been fun.
Thanks, David.